Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave, and I'm joined here with my co host. His name is Greg. What up, Greg?
What's up, Dave? How are you,
How you?
buddy?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm feeling a lot better than I was last week, talking about burnout. Maybe
Yeah,
just getting it off my chest made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
I do think talking about it helps.
Does talking
Um,
help?
that's what they say. I'm not convinced, but
That's,
that is what
that's
they
what we
say.
hope.
Um, Greg, I saw something today, and I want to bring it up on here.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to get into people's. Well, I definitely don't want to get into people's political views.
Okay.
And I
Good idea.
definitely, and I also don't really want to get into people's views of this person, which I think can be also, those two things could be intertwined. But I happened to just turn the TV on, put some background noise, and Dr. Phil was on.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say, okay. I thought this was going a very different way. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Phil is also very politically aligned. But that doesn't matter. I'm not a huge fan of Dr. Phil. At one point, before I knew anything about psychology, I kind of was. I would watch it here and there, but then as I, gained some knowledge, I realized that I don't really align with a lot of the way Dr. Phil is, and I think it's a lot for show. But that's just my personal opinion. But anyways, the episode was about two parents who have a young child with schizophrenia, and it made me think of so many of our episodes and like the whole point of this show. Actually, we do the exact opposite of what Dr. Phil did on there. He did this whole thing where they painted out this child's diagnosis of schizophrenia as basically being that child's dangerous, all the
Mhm.
potential danger and they could cause, basically painting the kid out to be a monster. And I was thinking about it, I was like, and I've even like I was just reflecting on it because we had somebody a few weeks ago, who was really gracious with the feedback they gave, and they kind of talked about how we like kind of normalize a lot of the diagnoses that we talk about that other people might find to be a little scary. And I was even thinking about like when we had NYC
Yeah.
schizophrenic
Yeah.
on, and even like her approach is kind of normalizing it and like helping people understand like just because someone's diagnosed with something like schizophrenia, it doesn't mean they're a monster.
Yeah, no, in fact, like it makes me so I get what you're saying. Like we try to try to figure out what's good about people, what's the kind of the bright side.
Yeah.
And in a sense, like even with schizophrenia, like a lot of people will say, I feel like I was born in the wrong time period. And I bet you a lot of people with schizophrenia feel that way too, because if you were born, you know, a few thousand years ago with schizophrenia, you were definitely rising to the top for so many reasons, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you could talk with things and people that aren't there. You hear
Sure.
voices that aren't there. Those are skills, right? I mean, seriously, right? And probably with a lot of insight, it's probably tapping into some unconscious,
Yeah.
thought. And we're going to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that
But
today.
it
And
definitely doesn't
yeah,
just automatically make a person dangerous.
absolutely
And
not.
so much of it is like environmental is such a
Hmm.
big factor of it, treatment, interventions, and just like the way that this episode was, the tone of it and everything like that, I was like, this is sad. This is really sad.
So whenever you see someone who is maybe having like a psychotic break or something like that, and maybe we watched clips of it, or hopefully I'll be seeing a lot of that. Not hopefully, but when we're at my new job where I'm working in an emergency situation, I'm going to see a lot of that. And I think like what I notice when people are in that state, and the few times that I've been witness to that, it's they get very frustrated and irritated only when people are not at all trying to understand them. Because think about how frustrating that is when no one gets where you're coming from. No one
Yeah.
understands what you're saying. And then, of course, you're just going to get more and more elevated. But if someone can try to be like, all right, well, like, what are you like, try to understand you and try to hear you and listen to you when no one else is, I think maybe that's where some of the healing can start right away.
Right. Right.
Like I
For
get
sure.
it. Even like I remember Boy Vey, Charlie in school would talk about that. Like if someone was schizophrenic and they were kind of talking very like tangential, they're like all over the place. It's like find something that does sort of make sense and just lead the conversation in that direction. Like
Yeah.
don't be like, "Hey, that thing you just said makes no sense at all."
Hmm.
That's going to cause a little combative situation. Yeah. And also, I got to be honest, Dave, I've never watched Dr. Phil.
Oh, you never have?
No, but isn't he the Catch Me Outside? Catch Me Outside?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How about that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only clip I've
So
seen.
you don't have a formed opinion of him?
I don't. I mean, there's a comedian that does him a lot, and I think he's funny. I think it's Adam Ray or something. But yeah, no, I've only seen like people sort of satirizing him, making fun of him a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah,
He's
I
part
don't
of the
know.
Bald Brotherhood, so I usually just kind of give people a little bit of
You can
grace.
have them. You can have them.
But he is doing that thing though, where he's just the top's gone and the sides are on. I don't know if I approve of
Yeah.
that.
The
The,
horseshoe.
the horseshoe, yeah, the George Jefferson, but he pulled it off.
I mean, George Costanza.
No, the George Jefferson, which is a much maybe an older reference that not a lot
Yeah,
of
we
people.
used to call it the Costanza, I think.
Yeah, can't stand you.
Um, yeah, I'll leave my opinions about him to the side because I don't want to alienate anyone. But
Dave, I think we're picking up the vibe that maybe you don't like Dr. Phil. I don't
I,
think you're leaving anything aside.
yeah.
I don't even
So,
think he's a real
anyways,
doctor.
you made an announcement just now that you got a new job. Right after our burnout episode, you got a new job.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, no, I'm excited. Excited and scared.
That was
Anybody?
already in the works. So just to be clear, Greg did not just talk about burnout and then quit his job.
Yeah,
That would have been
yeah,
the exact opposite of what we discussed doing in that episode. That was already in the works, just so people are aware.
yeah. No, I mean, I just feel like it's time to sort of put my money where my mouth is,
This was
and that's
always part of
sort
the
of
journey though, for
yeah,
you. For you,
yeah.
and like we both talked about this, like our when when we made this leap into doing therapy work, we were also both holding on to to our, previous jobs, which
Hmm.
I still am here and you're, you know, leaving now, but that was always part of the conversation was like at some point maybe going all in,
Yeah,
all in this kind of in the field. Because your other job is outside of the field.
absolutely. Yeah. So
Completely.
I'm all in, and we're gonna see where it takes me. Hopefully, it's the right decision.
And if it's not,
But
you'll just make
y-
another decision.
you know what I could have done to really make this decision? I could have consulted the cards,
Yeah, you could have.
but
And that would
that's
have
not
been
what I did.
you'd
And I
have been
wonder what they would have told me, you
you'd have
know?
been a fool. Or is that what
Oh,
it,
that's my favorite card. We'll talk about it. So,
okay.
um, obviously, well, not obviously, Dave. What? Now, this is sort of and I don't want to like pigeonhole you, but I feel like this is more of your realm than my realm. And before we did start cursory research, like we try our best for sure. But this is a huge topic, which for a lot of people, I mean, you have to have a calling for it. I mean, lots of study, whatever. I find it really cool. But Dave, before any of this, what did you think of when you thought of tarot cards? Did you have any experience with this or
Yeah.
thoughts about? Oh, okay. Well, okay. Do you want to share?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know of them, and I actually had a patient read my cards one time, just
Ooh.
casually. She was yeah, she was like, "You want let me read your cards?" And she did it. I was like, "Oh my God."
Did it hit? It did.
It
Wow. I
really
love
did.
that. I love that. So, did you feel like before this that maybe it was associated with the occult? Because I
No,
always did.
no. It's just one of those like spiritual I don't know, it's like in your palms
Mediums?
read. Yeah, it's like in your palm read, or I don't know,
So
having
it is like
having
getting your
people read
palms
the
read.
lines in your hand or something like that. I don't know.
So it's Ouija board in some ways where you're kind of like tapping into something. You're looking for something, so I think you're kind of tapping into the conscious and we're getting
Yeah.
somewhere there. But where this like, I've heard this described as like the universe in 78 cards and what I think why this has the upper hand in tapping into your inner wisdom is because it uses these archetypes and I think the symbolism and the things that these different cards represent, like the high priestess and the fool and the devil and the magician, all these things sort of represent archetypes that we've seen before and are a part of all of us in some kind of way, or they remind us of someone or they remind us of some event. So when you're putting out images that are sort of these cards are kind of put together over the years, and you'll talk about that a little bit, but it's almost like this living document where images that maybe didn't make much sense were kind of weeded out, and the ones that really kind of stuck, just this is just like made over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's something really cool about that. And the idea that we have the answers all along, like we have this we can glimpse into our past, we can look at our future, and these cards help us sort of connect back to it and help us understand that we have had the answers all along. They're just somewhere inside our unconscious mind, and these are sort of prompts to help bring it to our current awareness. I
Right.
think, you know?
I guess
I don't know. So what is the like? Is there some history on this? Like just a little bit, maybe.
there
It's
is.
hard, right?
It's and like most things, it's kind of a we know some pieces of it, some of it's kind of like pieced together a little bit. So I mean, just kind of like roughly probably thought to be established around like the 14th century in like Turkey, Middle East, Egypt area, potentially having some roots to like a Middle Eastern parlor card game called Tarochi, I
Oh,
believe.
sounds fun.
um but the when it really like kind of formed into more of like what we know it to be is like during a renaissance in the 14th 15th century in like Italy and Europe. There became like this larger resurgence of Christian symbolism, which obviously played pretty heavily into like the design of the cards and things like that. um so around the 19th century though, we got a couple of like really important um card type decks, I guess you would say. Two of them being like the Rider Waite Smith deck, I guess, is a really popular one, and the Aleister Crowley is the other one. And both of these these were all part of like the secret society in England at the time, which also included like Bram Stoker and William Yeats
Oh,
and
okay.
these guys, Aleister Crowley. And so I mean it's these, pretty big thing at this time. I think this was like the first secret society to also include women in it. And actually one of the early decks was I don't can't remember which one, if it was the Rider Waite one or not, was actually illustrated by a woman.
Yeah.
So they had that dynamic to it.
There's something kind of cool going on here, especially with the Renaissance when they're taking these like images, and maybe they're taking some from the Middle East. Maybe they're probably spending a lot of time taking images from, the Romans and the Greeks and kind of like what the Renaissance is all about. Um, but like these symbols, for whatever reason, they're putting them on cards because they speak to them in some way, right? They seem important. And even when I'm going through the cards, I don't have my own deck because there's a stigma with me. I don't know if it's like the same kind of idea with the Ouija board. Like I'm afraid I'm inviting something into the house or something. I don't know. That's wild. I know, but there is something when you look at these symbols that's like these are important. They like represent something. Don't you think?
Sure.
Okay, all right.
These
I
are
always just
important.
no. I mean, don't you? But that's got to be something to it, doesn't it? Like
This
that's
guy's
has to
playing
be.
gin rummy and he's like having epiphany. He's like, oh my God.
It's funny that you say that because this like initially they are just used for as like playing cards, right?
Yeah, it's a part, like I said, it's like a parlor game at first.
Yeah, and you can still see like if you have a deck of
Yeah.
cards, it's like it's very
So
similar.
so this like Renaissance period where the Christian symbolism becomes like this focus piece, I think is rather interesting. And like I do love like Renaissance periods
Mhm.
because of that. Like there's just this greater appreciation for symbolism, art, history in some way, and it's almost like in culture, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this merging of culture and symbolisms and different like facets, and I just find that to be very interesting. But this like time started to draw attention to these cards from like obviously pretty important people, and that continues as like philosophers and psychologists like Carl Jung, who's a very notable name that's going to be attached to like some of like the way that these tarot cards are utilized for in like psychology and things like that.
Yeah, what's
They
funny
get
is
attracted to this.
I love Carl Jung, and I've read quite a few of his books, and I've never run into any mention of tarot,
Which is
but
interesting because anytime you look up tarot though and you look up that
the
in
name pops up.
psychology, Jungian archetypes come up nonstop.
Like so Jung is taking these archetypes from myths and legends.
Yeah.
And I think that like yeah, they these kind of things do appear in myths and legends, right? Priests and emperors and fools and the
Mhm.
devil and magician. These are all like the main characters of life, I think. And
Oh,
also,
yeah.
what I think is important, it's like the main characters in your own subconscious, like the different parts of you. And why it like reminds me of Jung in a way is because Jung's like, there's all these archetypes, and he's like, maybe you're dealt out a deck of cards, and like the devil card comes up, or the fool comes up, or the high priestess comes up, and it's like this is what you're really associating with, and there's a lot of this energy coming from you, but maybe for Young, he would be like, all right, so you have a lot of energy here, but like you're lacking energy maybe in this other archetype, and maybe you need to bring more balance to your life, and maybe that's where he would think that this was an interesting take on, um, psychology.
Enneagrams.
Absolutely.
So we
Yeah.
talked about enneagrams in an episode that actually had roots ages and ages. Like
Way
that's
before.
that way before all of this. So there's a lot of talk that Jungian's archetypes are actually kind of borrowed from that, right? Is that
Sure.
is that correct or no?
No, yeah, absolutely. All
Yeah.
of that. And as the further you get into like theories and all these different ideas and philosophies, it's like everything's just kind of borrowed from everything.
Right.
And even just talking about the Renaissance, it's like here's the people, talking about people who lived, 1,000 years or 2,000 years earlier, and what did they find interesting? What did they find useful? And it's like it just kind of keeps like, it's like this
Yeah.
cycle.
Like it's like I said, like they're during this Renaissance here, they're getting attracted to Christian symbolism that existed, previously, and then now they're making like different meaning out of it, or they're trying to make different interpretations out of it. So like anytime you think you have a new idea, guess what? It already exists.
There
It's
you
a
go.
borrowed
Yeah.
idea from something else. You're not unique. You're not special.
Yeah. Wow, Dave, that's a great message.
Just
I feel like
kidding.
Dr. Phil
I'm
right
just
now.
I'm just kidding. You're all monsters.
So, how is
Yeah,
this thing? I mean, we could talk a little bit about how it's set up right now, and then maybe if we have time at the end, we can go back and kind of like go through some of these cards and see what they mean, and
for
sort of
sure.
talk about the imagery a little bit.
For
So,
sure,
how
Greg.
what's the deal with this thing?
I'm gonna tell you if you'll stop talking. Well, first off, I think I do think that like we probably should have done an episode about Jungian archetypes at some point, like just that.
Hmm.
We still should probably, but that would have probably been helpful before this episode. So I added that to the list. So at some point we'll get to that. But for tarot, it is there's 78 cards in a deck. And actually, I don't know if you know or you've heard this, but like there's some decks with like more, like
Yeah,
82 in some. I don't know why there's different variations. That is
someone was
probably,
trying to get cute.
yeah, that's beyond my scope. But there's two types of cards in there. There's a major arcana, I think is how you would pronounce it, and there's 22 of those cards. And there's a minor arcana, which there is 56 of those cards. So that obviously adds up to 78. The major arcana reflects overarching themes that are encountered in life. These cards range from the Fool, which you had mentioned already, Greg, and the
Yeah.
World, and explore the depths of the journey through life. So this is like the big ideas.
You know what?
Um,
I don't want to interrupt you here, but it's like it sort of reminds me of the Hero's Journey episode where it's like these cards are sort of things that you have to face throughout your journey. They're sort of like part of the journey of life is like encountering each one of these or becoming each one of these in some way,
sure.
or needing each one. Yeah, it's interesting. It's just something that shows up over and over and over again.
And the minor arcana ones speak more to situations, specific events, emotions, thoughts, and people. So within them, there are four suits. There's wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. Um, these suits symbolize action, which would be fire, emotion, which is water, thoughts, which is air, and physicality, which is earth.
Well,
Uh,
that's the
I guess this is all Greek to me. Each suit contains cards from ace to 10 and court cards, which are page, knight, queen, and king. The court cards represent specific people or components um, of the querent's identity and personality, while ace through 10 highlight a journey, including moments or situations that compose this journey.
Yeah, so it does sound an awful lot like a regular deck of cards. So
It
you
really
are
does.
definitely playing with, like you're talking four suits, you're talking ace to 10, and then you're talking page, knight, queen, king. And I guess you just substitute page for jack, and there you go.
You want to
Um,
play 78 card pickup, Craig?
no, something's wrong with this deck. What is this, Uno? As he said.
I just throw the cards at you, pick them up.
So Dave, you talked a little bit before about and these are kind of like beautiful cards too, and I really like the symbolism and everything like that. It almost makes me want to like get a tattoo of one of these things if I wasn't gonna get cursed. But we are here to talk specifically, I mean, in some ways, like we're always here to talk about therapy, but like this came up a lot. Like these are used in therapy. You kind of had like a countertransference situation where your patient
Yeah.
used them on you,
Yeah.
but most of the time, or I shouldn't say most of the time, it's in what sense would this be like appropriate to use in therapy? It's kind of like you really got to have a very specific patient, don't you?
You do what you do with most unique stuff that you do. Like some people, they're not going to buy what you're selling, and you just have to do the approach that works for them. But
Mm,
from what I understand, therapists that utilize tarot in therapy, um, what they do with it is it's less about like the traditional meanings of the card. So you're not going to look at it and be like, oh, that's the Joker. That means yada yada or whatever.
yeah,
It's more of like looking at the cards and paying attention to what thoughts, feelings, and questions start to come up as you see the imagery of the card.
yeah.
So the patient could potentially make connections that you don't see, or that they maybe have nothing to do with the meaning of the card. What does the Joker mean in
Uh,
actuality?
um, I don't remember. I don't even know if
Uh,
there was a Joker. The
I thought I
fool, you
said
mean? The
Joker. Is that what
fool.
I said? Fool. Oh, what does
Yeah.
the fool mean?
So the fool is interesting because it's like this guy who's about to like walk off a cliff. So to me, you know, what it represents is the start of a journey, the fall, the man before the fall, right?
Yeah.
Like an untested person. So it could be like a beginner thing. It could be a lot of things. So many things could be coming up. And what I think is interesting, what you're saying is like, and it's making me think of what you said early on, where you're connecting this to reading palms and Ouija board and all that stuff. But the way you're putting it right now is making me think almost more like dream therapy or like dream
Well,
interpretation.
yes, for sure. That's kind of what the how this is kind of comes off. But like, so the patient could get the fool card. It
Yeah.
has that meaning, but then they could say, my dad played the fool at the Renaissance fair and he always wanted to be a knight and he was never promoted. And, this represents my dad and his failure in life.
Yeah, and how I fear that I'm going to follow in his footsteps.
I'm going to be the fool in the
Yeah.
Renaissance fair forever.
Yeah, no,
Um,
exactly. It just brings up stuff in your life that's, you know, these images are so sort of universal that they connect to all some
yeah.
part of our life. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep.
Like the high priestess, it's like, okay, my mother is like overbearing. She's, you know what
Sure.
I mean? Or
Sure.
my wife is, very needy or whatever. I don't know, like whatever. I don't know where that came from.
Slow your roll. Slow your roll.
Put those cards away.
So it's about just kind of looking into yourself and kind of utilizing intuition a little bit to make some kind of like you said, dream interpretation is kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it's like
Someone
doesn't
tells me
need to
their
mean something.
dream and I'll start to ask them questions about like what they're dealing with based on some of the themes in the dream. I typically can kind of like create a narrative that like, hey, I think your dream might have had to do something with this. Or I'll ask them like, thinking about that, what do you think? And then usually they can come up with a suggestion. So I assume you're kind of doing the same thing. And it's not so for the tarot in this version of it, it's not about predicting the future. It's not about, and it's also not like replacement for the therapy. It's just
Hmm.
acting as a metaphor or visualization for situations and experiences that they might be going through. Um, and the purpose of that is because metaphors and visualizations can usually help build a more like an easier way to deal with things that feel less tangible And the
Yeah.
example I would give you for that is like early on, if you've been listening to us for a while, one of the approaches I talked about a long time ago was using this approach called the entity to deal with like things like depression or anxiety. And it's putting like, it's acting as if it's actually something outside of you that exists and you can see it. And when it's approaching you, then, and we would talk about like the opposite action, right? When you see it, it's easier to figure out how you combat it versus it being this like thing you can't see that's more of a
Mhm.
concept inside of you and you don't really know how to like even approach it. So when you start to visualize and or use metaphors for things, it becomes a little bit easier sometimes to figure out what your next step to um to approach it or to deal with it will be.
And it's funny that you say that because it's like even with dreams, it's like I had this dream. Like I had this patient recently who had this dream that, and he's, we'll just say teenage age, and he's burying or digging up dinosaur bones in his side yard. And we were like talking about it. I was like, wow, that's a really interesting dream. And like for whatever reason it hit him and I'm like, all right, so like side yard like suggests like something maybe, hidden and obscure, something that you're not so proud of. And like, what do dinosaurs represent? They represent death. And
Yeah.
then we ended up kind of getting to the point where like we're talking about how I talked about how like when you're a teenager, it's like your childhood is dying, right? And it's a scary thing. It's something you don't really want to talk about because you don't want to, seem like weak because you're kind of coming into manhood. And so it's like this hidden sort of fear that you have. Like a dinosaurs could represent fear, and we just kind of got into this thing that's like, oh wow, like this dream probably meant nothing at all, but we use the imagery to kind of come up, with something that's maybe bothering him or he can at least start to like look inside and see like what could this be that's giving me this angst? And these sort of cards have every image that you could possibly need to say like, oh, like this one's sticking out to me. And I know that's not how I almost said play. I don't know. But I know that's not exactly how it works, but like just by looking at them all, it's like, oh yeah, this one's sticking out to me because my mother's overbearing, or the devil card's sticking out to me because I'm like repressing something or I'm deceiving
Right.
myself in some way. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely a prompt or like a jump start to understanding what's going on in your mind just by visualizing. And if you have no visualization at all, it's like really hard to get started. Like, what is it? What is it that's bothering me?
Yeah.
At least with these cards, you could be like, well, that could be it. That could be it. And it gets you thinking, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a benefit to people because some things that they might be dealing with, they might not even know how to start dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
So some of the uses for tarot could be connecting with your inner self, self-reflecting, problem solving, just finding clarity in situations, contemplating whether changes that need to happen or that you've been thinking about, or examining your own beliefs.
I think that's a great example, Dave, of like us knowing what the answer is at all times and then like seeing that card. Like, so it's when you said contemplate changes, I was thinking like, of course, thinking of myself, like, or taking, like, anybody taking a new job or making a big decision, it's like, I'm looking for a sign and you know what you're gonna do, and maybe like you see that card, you're like, okay, yeah, I know I should do this. This is what the card's telling me to do, or I shouldn't, right? Like
Yeah,
it kind of like helps you solidify that decision. You're looking for the answer that you want to see, and when you see it, you kind of interpret it the way you want to, but it's
sure.
all already there in your head. You know what I mean?
So,
I think.
so my question would be,
Okay.
if you're a therapist who utilizes tarot, and like I looked it up, and I found people talking about using the tarot in their therapy or whatever.
Mhm.
Do you do it all the time? Is it like,
Anyone for
or you're
everybody?
like, hey, you want to dabble with this deck, or is it like, no, we're gonna do tarot every time we meet?
That's a great question,
That's my
and
question.
it can't you well look, maybe it has to do with like marketing and it's like this, hey, look, this is what I do. This is my niche. Like if you're into this idea and you've kind of hit bunch of walls with therapists, CBT isn't doing it for you, maybe it's time you explore something a little bit different and have a
Right.
little fun with it, you know?
Yeah. Oh,
Why else do people do it? They're looking for answers, right?
yeah. I mean, here's my thing. I think it's cool. Like,
I do too.
do your thing. Like, find your way to connect with people that's going to be unique and get them. and connect with them. And like there's going to be people out there that are like, yeah, tarot's cool. I'll try that. The same way that like I'm excited to find universal monsters and representations in mental
Mm.
health and utilize those to help people kind of envision different things. Or we're talking about the hero's journey and getting people to like visualize it through these like these paths that we're
Yeah.
laying out for them. It's all cool because it's
Yeah, no, it's
like
all
it
cool.
we're being unique and we're developing strategies to handle things that like we all know not one size fits all, right? So not everybody's going to want to do tarot in therapy. Not everybody's going to like even think, some people will think this is a crock of shit,
Yeah,
and that's fine. But
it is
somebody
fine.
else will think, hey, that sounds really cool and I want to try that. That sounds like a nice approach for me.
Right, and I don't think it's not, how can it be a crock of shit if if it's stood the test of time? That's
I
part of the
I
problem, right?
don't think this is a crock of shit because it's like you're not actually like predicting their future. You're just asking them to make interpretations. And it's all based on stuff they already know, which is what therapy is all about. The
Right.
answers are already inside of you.
Mhm.
Our job is to elicit and extract those answers from within you. And if that means like taking some images and getting you to interpret it helps you discuss and identify things that are already inside you, it's the same thing as what we're doing in other strategies. So this, I think this is legit.
I do too. And so when you're doing like, yeah, I don't think anybody does like story therapy or, actually I've heard of Dungeons and Dragons therapy. It's all kind of like in the same realm. And what they're doing is it's like, hey, let's build a character here or let's
I do
identify
that. I did
archetypes
that.
here. Really?
Was it from me telling you?
No.
I had my patient. It was so cool. And then he made his own character.
That's what I
And
try to have people do too. But I do it in a different way, not Dungeons and Dragons, because I'm not a Nord. That's how my kid says.
watch
I
yourself.
know we have plenty of that. I know, and I'm just kidding. I'm not. I take that back 100%. But you
But
want to
then
know
he
who
had
did?
his girlfriend do it, and now there's all these like people making characters themselves. So cool.
I think what's so awesome about that is you're saying, all right, I'm gonna build a character, and then you're building this character, and you're going through it, and what you're like inadvertently doing is identifying your values, identifying things that you admire in people, identifying what do you think it takes to get a job done, what's important to you, and it's like, dude, just do that to you.
Yeah.
That's you, and that's
As my patient was doing it, he stated it was so easy to come up with all my weaknesses.
hmm
It was so hard for me to list all my strengths.
oh,
And I
that
was like,
moment.
damn, dude, that's why we're doing this, man. Like
It's
this
also
is the
like
point.
welcome to the club, my friend.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
It was
mean?
great. It was a great little activity to do.
That's an awesome thing for him to say too, because that's insightful. Because I'll tell you what, everyone listening kind of feeling that way too, where it's like, hey, I could list for you. I could make a pretty extensive list about everything that I'm kind of insecure about, things I don't like about myself. The negative screams at us all, and the positive's just kind of this quiet voice. But like, so that's why sometimes like if you're doing something like Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
or whatever it is, you're with other people and other people can kind of help you see like what's cool about you. Like what is it what do you think you could use or like what do I and then that's kind of like this process of like working on it together that you can kind of do in the office too.
Yeah.
Like I see this about you. Like
You,
this is something that's,
just kind of thinking about like unorthodox approaches to therapy.
hmm.
It's interesting because at my last supervision that we did, a group supervision, uh we had a an older former therapist come in and talk to us about the empty chair approach.
Oh.
I guess
Did
I'll
I tell you what happened with the empty chair?
yes.
Okay.
And
Should
but
I
he no like
Okay.
but like he brought it up again, and one of my co-therapists there, because he was like teaching the approach to us or just recommending that we use it for grief. And one of my co-therapists was like, I don't feel comfortable doing that approach. That approach is not one I would ever do. I would feel way too awkward. And a couple people were like, yeah, it is kind of awkward. And I think that's just a great example of how like as much as every patient is unique, every therapist is unique. And there's not one thing that we're all going to be able to do. And like tarot is not going to be comfortable for some people, just like the empty chair approach. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, it's like you pretend the individual's like passed away loved one has entered the room, is now sitting in the empty chair next to him. And you
Right.
ask them to address that person, that, you know, that chair, as if that person were there, and have a conversation with them. And some people get really awkward
Look,
about that.
I'm gonna tell you the truth of how I feel about that. I think the empty chair could be completely useful if you're like, I'm going to have this person I need to confront, or I need to talk to my boss about something, or I need to talk to my mher about this thing, and I'm kind of like whatever it is to confront something.
Or closure, right?
Practice, more like practice, right? Or in a sense, or
Yeah.
even closure. But like the thing is, with the grief, it's like, oof, that could put somebody in that could be a slippery slope if you're asking someone who passed away to get in that chair and like bring that into the room. I don't know. In a way, it could feel disrespectful to me.
Greg, I just wanted to tell you that therapist that made you feel that way, he's sitting in that chair over here right next to me.
You know
So
what, pal?
maybe
I got a couple of problems with you.
is there anything you want
Yeah.
to say to him?
Yeah, no, and you know what it's making me think of? Because we talked about Jung, and now I'm kind of reminded of we did talk about archetypes when we did the Jung episode, but we did them, but we didn't really go into depth. But we did talk about the universal unconscious and how there's these, you know, we know these things and we all kind of have respect for these certain archetypes with that just the second we're born we just know some things like what's beauty and what's this and what's that, and there's also this concept of individuation that he talks about, and that's simply kind of developing that relationship between your subconscious mind and your conscious mind. So like knowing why you do things a little bit more, it's really helpful, and he especially talks about it in terms of the shadow, which could be represented by death or could be represented by the devil in the cards. But it's like if we don't pay attention to the shadow, to the darkness inside of us, and like kind of make a little space for that in our mind,
Yeah.
and if you're always pushing that away, you're kind of going to give it the power to become autonomous and do its own thing through your behaviors. But if you don't push that away in your mind and you kind of just like let it be there and know that it's not you, and you don't try to push it away, you don't try to hide from it, you don't try to repress it. I mean, you have a lot more control over it. It's all very interesting. I have to admit. Um, so what do you want to talk about now? You want to get into what some of these cards are? Do you want to what do you
How
think?
about we talk about the next thing on our outline,
Okay, let's do it.
whatever that is.
What is that? Tarot and therapy,
I
and
like how
then
you asked as if we don't have an outline.
well, yeah, well, you know what we'll do? Let's look at some of these things because we're kind of like going through this pretty good, and we're doing okay on time, and I want to make
So you
sure
want to look at some of the cards?
I do.
All
I
right. So
do.
Greg sent me a link, and we're supposed to take a look at these cards if this
Yeah,
link
let's do
works.
it. Let's take a look.
Of the cards and their meanings, right?
Yeah, now I'm having a hard time getting in.
All right. So the first card is the Fool. Is that what you want to do? You want to look at?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
I
got the
do.
major arcana list of tarot cards. So there's 22 of these, right?
There is.
Of the major arcana. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So the Fool is tarot card. Wait, the Fool meaning in upright position. What the heck does that mean?
So the thing is, right? I think that what that is talking about is if you're being dealt these cards, maybe you're dealt the card right side up, maybe you're dealt it upside down.
Oh, so you don't even they don't even like organize the deck? Well, that's lazy.
I know, do not like that approach, but I guess
You know
that's
what
kind
that
of
does
how
to Greg's OCD, guys?
I know, I could never do
He's
that.
like, oh my God, these cards are in all different order.
It would be either it would be all bad news or you know what I mean? Like sometimes okay
All
news.
right. So if it's in the upright position, it means freedom, naivete,
Hmm.
new beginnings. But if
Yes.
it's reversed, it means you're head over heels, foolishness, or avoiding a fresh start. How do you?
But look at I see, I don't know, like I'm looking at that imagery. I'm seeing like there's this guy, he's like a handsome guy. He's about to like he's looking up and he's not paying attention to
He's
what's
got a little
important.
baby goat at his foot or a
Yeah.
dog. I can't tell.
And the dog's kind of like, "Hey, look, don't walk off this cliff." And
He's
he's
like,
too
pay attention to
busy.
what you're doing, guy.
Right, right. So maybe this represents you're not.
You're not
following
paying
your
attention
values. You're not paying attention to your
because
responsibilities.
you're
Like
so
I
head over heels.
see, there's so much to look at in these things. The next card I really kind of like, and it's the magician. And so if traditionally it represents creativity and energy for like channeling energy from a different kind of place, like from either from above or whatever you kind of think of, transmutation, it's the magician, I guess, dealt in reverse could be like deceitful and trickery and backfiring. I also like have heard them say that the magician's kind of quote is, as above, so below. And I'm trying to like figure out like what that means, but to me it kind of represents the relationship between the subconscious and the conscious mind and how they're both kind of two of the same and should be working together in harmony instead of kind of opposing each other. I also think of alchemy when I see a magician and, traditionally alchemists are trying to take basic metals and turn them into gold and things like that. So it's like what in my life is do I see as kind of a flaw or I see as like not going really well and how can I change that into something positive? That's what I see with the magician.
And it's like laziness. It's like instead of just going to get some gold and digging it up like everybody else, you're sitting there trying to do potions.
Dave, look, that's not terrible. Like so if someone said that and then that's cool that you got that idea from the magician card because it's like is something going to have as much meaning if I try to take the easy way and just kind of
It's
like find,
deceitful.
you know what I mean? Like I think
Yeah.
that's cool.
So the next one is the High Priestess Tarot card. And this one, if it's dealt upright, could be silence, spirituality, or sacredness. But if it's reverse, it means secrets, fooling yourself, or a loss of spiritual connection.
Yeah, do you like when I see this card, does it like let's try that. So you see this card, does it do anything? I
I'm
don't
all
like
right.
I don't love how it says
So
BJ on
I do love that.
it.
and so I look at it and I'm like, I don't see any of that. I see
No, me
this, I
neither.
see a little bit of like the spirituality piece. Like she
Me too,
looks
by the
like
way.
there's a cross on her for sure.
Hmm.
She's got, is that a crescent moon? But it's like maybe it's like a horn at the bottom, but like in a crescent moon shape.
Yeah, like almost like that's almost representing like a pagan god, and then this could sort of the cross is there for Christianity. It's like it's got everything. There's black and there's white around her,
And there's teal.
and there's also teal, which I feel like is
Right.
less important. But
And so behind her almost reminds me of like a peacock. So I think of like when I think of peacocks, I think of like
hey,
flashiness a little bit and
anything goes,
like
dude. It's kind of snobby,
um
kind of
yeah, but
Instagram.
like yes, fooling yourself could
Yeah,
fall into that a little bit. It's almost like this like fake bravado that you put on to like
yeah,
impress people, right?
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
see, this works. Like so. The next card, you
If
guys
you
gotta.
pulled that one, Greg, I would have been like, look at you peacocking all
I
around
know. Who
here,
do you think you
dude.
are? Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to cover up?
You got a
What
mustache.
insecurities
What's
are
really
trying?
under that?
That's a
What's
good
really on your
point.
upper lip?
The problem is I don't really have a great upper lip.
I don't have an upper lip at all, actually.
That's the problem. So the Empress is the next tarot card, and I don't know how many more of these we're gonna do, but this is kind of fun actually. But Dave, can you maybe give
I
the?
wish I found a way to like share this with
That's what I'm gonna say. I
the.
was gonna say, is there a
Why
way you can
didn't
give
I
the
do
website?
that? Yeah.
But anyways, the website is purplegarden.co. But, just look up Purple Garden Tarot cards. I'm sure you'll find it. But anyways, so the Empress is this feminine energy. And you know what's interesting? There's like a certain percentage of, feminine energy and masculine energy. Like it's almost on like a spectrum through all human beings. It's not like all men have masculine energy with no feminine energy. We of course have feminine energy too. That's a lot to say, but like so it's like this like continuum of energy. So like maybe you get this card and it's like am I expressing too much or not enough of my feminine energy? Am I paying attention to that? Like for fertility,
I mean, it looks like Chapel
abundance,
Roan for people familiar. I mean, the Empress is like, yeah, she's
seductive.
something.
Seductive, right?
All right, sure.
Oh,
Flashy.
look. All right. Look, I'm seeing seductive right now. Maybe this says something about like things that like I'm lacking in my life right now.
I guess.
You know what? No, it's true though. That's what's shown up to me. So obviously like these things have each one of them have their own shadow counterpart too. Like for
So
example,
she also has an Ouija um
symbol, like a planchette.
what's the planchette? She has a
Yeah.
planchette right next
Yeah.
to her.
The you want to know why these are so it's almost like why The Alchemist like kind of speaks to so many people. There's so much symbolism and just like common symbolism like the desert and kings and hawks and whatever alchemy and there's just so much sort of symbolism that kind of like rings cool for all of us. There's like a Roman numeral in there for like I mean I guess it's just being number 3 but still.
There's that
The
feminine,
emperor.
yeah, that has the feminine sign on the planchette too. I just realized.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
the
yeah. So let's
emperor.
look. Yeah, let's look at the emperor. This one reeks of masculinity.
Yep.
He's in a freaking throne which has ram's heads
Yeah.
all on it. Like he's very authoritative, powerful.
Wise because he's
That's
got a long white beard.
Yep. But if you flip it, if it was reversed, it would be lack of power and authority, lack of courage and overwhelmed. It's almost like what you were talking about, Greg, like too much, the like we all have a little bit of masculine and a little bit of feminine, but like it's again, it's like that over masculine style. Like
Yeah.
so
Like toxic masculinity.
yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I
But
could
here's the
envision here.
thing. And what we're learning
But
about
you
these
might
tarot
need
cards.
this if I'm in a different position in my life. I might see this, and this might give me strength and power, and say like, "Hell yeah, that's it's the emperor." But if I saw it and I'm in a different position in my life, and let's say I'm feeling fake, I'm feeling what's it called? I'm feeling fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
Um, I might say this and be like, "Yeah, that kind of represents that like over masculinity, like I'm hiding my insecurity
Yeah.
inside. I feel like a complete fraud." You know what I
Because I know
mean?
you so well, the thought that was in your head you were trying to reach was inadequate.
No, what's the word? What's the phrase
Yeah.
when we're like at a job and we feel, and we always say fake it till you make it, but what's the
Imposter?
imposter? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
I couldn't think of imposter. What's
Same
wrong with me?
story. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be a little harder than imposter.
Ooh.
But all right, so like, but look, here's the thing though. You're making a great point. By looking at this, it's a few things are happening here. All these archetypes are represented in us on some level. There's like because we've had mothers, we've had women in our life, we've had strong male figures in our life, we've had fools in our life, we've had magicians in our life, we've had all these kinds of people that represent this stuff. So it's a part of all of us too. So it's like a collective conscious, but it's also just our personal unconscious.
Yeah,
And it's like what's coming out too much, what's not coming out enough. And I feel like maybe these cards are just about trying to, and you might have said it before, like, but like regain balance, right?
sure. For the those cards that we just did, I think so. Hey, can you scroll down to card 6? I think it is the Lover's Tarot card.
Yeah, ooh,
It's
oh,
a
wow.
it's a rather beautiful one.
So,
A lot of
wow.
nudity in this one. Jeez.
Honestly,
Uh,
it's my favorite one so far. But this is, but like, honestly, like this, look at this. This is like Genesis. Doesn't this represent
it
like
looks just
Adam
like
and Eve?
Sega Genesis. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Um, ye-
Sega.
so so if it's upright, it represents love, an important choice or decision, or heaven sent. But if it's reversed, it represents unrequited love, bad choice, decision. It's not for you. Now imagine flipping I'm like, Greg, I'm your therapist right now.
Yeah.
I just got this card for you. What do you see here, buddy?
I'd be like, I see Adam and Eve, and I see them before the fall. Like, you
Greg,
want to know what? I'm telling Dave, I swear to
Greg,
God,
I'm your therapist.
something. I'm
Stop
sorry.
lying to yourself. What do you
Sorry,
really
therapist.
think?
But I'm telling you though, like honestly, something is pulling up for me.
Yeah,
And it's like, so say this card comes up, the lovers.
yeah.
It does sort of make you think, like, how am I addressing my own relationship? Like, am I being loving? Am I being,
Dude, there's a
appropriate?
mountain
Or
in
is,
between you guys,
oh my God. Yeah.
and there's another man in between you.
Yeah. and he's naked,
What
and
is
he's
going
naked.
on here, Greg?
A huge man with wings. So, I mean,
I don't think you compete.
and now, now the
You're-
word inadequate comes to mind, and that's how I feel. So, the chariot.
No, but like I like that. So you started to think about like how am I dealing with my own relationship? Now, did
Yeah.
that I was joking and I pointed out the mountain between you guys, but like what did you really think?
No, honestly, I started to think like, I see the lover's card and I see what's supposed to be like an appropriate love situation, and then say you're handed it in reverse, and it's like, oh, like you're making bad decisions. This is unrequited love, and this isn't right, or something's not going right. Then you can kind of be like, all right, well, is there anything that I'm doing that's contributing to that? Is there anything I can address there? Can I fix this? Do I want to fix this? And if not, should I be moving away from this? So it's like it really does make you, you know, approach things through like with like deeper thought and not just being like my relationship is like it's either like you just think it's fine or you think it's not fine, but whatever it
Right.
is, are you really thinking about it?
It's either fine or it's trash, you know?
Well, that's it. That's it. Hold on, let's go. Let's find another good one. The
Yeah.
Hermit. Let's do that
What
one.
number is it?
That is number 9.
Oh, I just saw the devil. All right. The Hermit. This looks like Gandalf.
Yeah,
Um,
he's alone in the dark.
Clearly in the dark. He's got a lantern. He's got a
Mhm.
giant staff. He's got a white beard, big white beard, a robe on, and it looks like he's apparently standing in snow. And there is the world's tiniest tree behind him, or it's a symbol. I don't know.
So what are you getting from this?
Um, I just looked at the words, and I wish I didn't because I just saw solitude and was like, yeah, I guess it looks very lonely. No, but I see like guidance. I see maybe preparation for a journey. If I'm not going to look at the words, this is my
Yeah.
interpretation. So if I were to get this right now, I would actually say I feel like this kind of highlights like we had that discussion last week during burnout, like, and a lot of it's career based. It's about different journeys. It's about like taking on different projects and stuff like that. I can envision this kind of representing like some kind of life journey and like that guide, either being guided or needing to be prepared to be guide yourself and having adequate light and a staff to
Yeah.
ward off wolves.
And you can kind of be like, this card is telling you that you're looking for the answers to something, but only you have the answer. You're alone with
Yeah.
this. Or
If it
like,
was reversed, I would say maybe it means like I'm blindly like I
yeah.
don't know.
And
Like
you need to seek someone's, guidance, or you maybe
sure.
need to like look to other people. Or maybe it means if it's a hermit, maybe it's like, hey, you're really like talking about burnout again, like you're really in it too much. You're around too many people right now. You need to kind of like maybe you're an introvert and you
Yeah.
recharge alone.
Yeah. Why is he this one the hermit? Like a hermit is like
Yeah.
maybe he's like going into his basement to get another can of beans and like he just uses that lantern to go down there
Yeah.
because he has no
Yeah.
electricity anymore for some reason because he doesn't have a job because he never leaves his house.
And now he needs to kind of reflect.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the Wheel of Fortune card? Do you think I think that's kind of a cool
It's a little
thing.
different than the Wheel of Fortune I'm familiar with.
Me too, but look at the imagery.
It is cool. There's like a weird devil. There's some angels, I think,
One's an angel, one's like a duck or a goose.
or a
There's like a
sheep.
sphinx
Is there a
kind of
sheep with
thing.
horn with wings?
Looks like
Yeah,
maybe a
there's
bull with wings.
different.
Hmm. Maybe there's a lion with wings like reading. They're all
So
reading. They're on laptops.
so I was just scrolling down and like the justice one's cool. It's got that little scale.
Oh yeah, Justice is
Um,
great.
it's got a sword in one hand, so it's like yeah.
Sword and
But
scales.
then
That's a symbol for justice, right? I
yep,
mean,
yep. Also, great true crime podcast, Sword and Scale. So
okay.
shout out to that one.
All right.
The Hanged Man is another one. That one always creeped me out.
That creeps me out too. So like you get that card, like and shit, I shouldn't have looked at things either, but it's like, maybe you're stuck and you're attached to something you shouldn't be.
I
Um,
always took it as a very ominous
yeah.
symbol. I have such a um weird connection to that, like symbolism in general, like anything with like someone hanging just kind of like feels very negative. So it's like I don't
Well,
see any other interpretation of that,
but
but I
here's the
guess
thing. He's
there
not
is.
hanging from his neck. He's
I
hanging from
know.
his foot, which is
I always
different.
I always thought when yeah that it did mean that other way, but
Yeah,
death.
so I like how it says rite of passage, like you're about to experience something like that you have to go through to get to the next level. I
Yeah, you're
think
gonna pass out because you're hanging upside down when all the blood rushes to your head.
yeah, it's a rite of pass out. Sacrifice for the greater good, because he does look like he's kind of because he's looking like he could get out of it if he made
Yeah.
any effort at all. I think there's probably something there to talk about.
So I
Like he
mean, the next like yeah,
big card is
all the
great.
next cards are very cool. We have the death card, which is a pretty badass looking card. Temperance is cool looking. The devil one is awesome.
All right, so says you.
It's a very cool looking card. The tower,
The tower strikes me for whatever reason.
yeah.
So all right, let's try to see what like so the tower's on fire and stuff.
Where's the other cards though? So these are what do you the major
No,
ones.
those
Here's the minor.
these are the minors are kind of a little bit,
Go down
less
more. Yeah.
kind of interesting.
Which
So
is
there's
probably all of this is uninteresting to people not looking at the cards with us. So
yeah. Yeah, oh yeah,
so
you know what? You're probably right. We should probably kind of like wrap this up as far as
yeah,
this
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
goes. But
All
like
right. I think
just
we just got caught up because those are actually
they're so
pretty
fun,
cool.
right? I actually is like,
All right. We
I'm
might need to get
surprised.
a deck.
You know, I have a friend. Her name's Holly, and I
Yeah.
think her business is named Holly Simple. And she's a unbelievable artist. She moved to Philly like years ago, and she does a lot of things. She like does stuff for like the museum and stuff. But anyways, she created a deck of tarot cards. I'm gonna reach out to her and see if maybe
Yeah,
we can get some of that.
that'd be cool. That'd be cool. So yeah, I would love to own a deck. Actually, as I was listening to this, I kept hearing people talking about having their own decks, and I'm like, I kind of wish I had one. I
Yeah, but
really
like
like this one though.
if you get your own deck, there's some people who would say you have to kind of like introduce yourself to it, and like there's a lot of those games that I don't know if I could play.
All right.
I'm just saying. I'm just being honest as I try to do here on this
I'm
podcast.
not sure what that means, but
Like you have to there's something about that. I don't know. You have to acquaint yourself with it.
all right.
Um,
Quaint away.
I will. Well, I mean, I won't, but whatever. So listen, I think that there's a lot of this is a fun little topic, a lot of value
Yes.
here, and like you can kind of really go down a rabbit hole with this thing. You can kind of take it as seriously or not as seriously as you want. You can kind of use it in any way you want. These are just archetypes, symbols, and they get you thinking.
They really do. And
Yeah.
I do think that if you're someone who just finds this stuff fascinating, and I would just take a look at it and kind of even doing that exercise that Greg and I just did, looking at the cards, make your own interpretations. What do you see? What strikes you? What see if that's something that you would want to try to do with
Mhm.
a facilitator like a therapist or something like that.
Yeah, and we're sorry if we offended anybody who's like super maybe like a practitioner. I don't even know what the right term is there, but like of course, we never ever claim to understand these concepts fully unless it's like like if it's a psychology or therapy when we really kind of try to dig in on that. But like these are just things that we find kind of interesting and we, invite you to look more into it if it grabs you too.
Yeah, I don't think we insulted anyone. I think we're actually saying that we think
It's
it's cool.
badass,
I
dude.
think it's cool.
If
I
I
hope
wasn't
we
so
didn't
scared of
insult
it.
anyone because I think we're both kind of saying the same thing that we're like
Yeah.
kind of on board with this.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it's for me, like my style, because like I already have my own weird stuff.
Yeah.
So I
I
don't know how
know.
many more weird things
I
I
know.
can do. Pretty soon I'm gonna weird myself out of the office because like I think people are already like, what? They see some of
Yeah.
the things I'm doing and they're like, okay.
No, no, we all like it. We're in for it. I
Yeah.
mean, look, we're all trying to just help people here.
Yes. We're
So,
that's our goal. Um, so that is tarot as far as we could explain it. And if people want to chime in with more, or if they've had their own like interesting stories with using tarot, especially in therapy, we'd love to hear about it. So please share them with us. Um, as always, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, we would love if you would subscribe and make sure you ring that bell. so you can get notifications when we release new episodes and all that stuff. I'm going to do something that we kind of talked recently that we both never really do, but I do want to plug something really quick.
Plug away.
Just because I had a new work project that I started, and I think it really fits our audience as something that some people might find interesting or just something worth watching. Um, I started a new show interviewing individuals with disabilities or people who are also within the world of individuals with disabilities as far as like being caretakers or you know, people involved in like the agencies that support them and stuff like that. But I have 3 episodes up on YouTube. The show is called Noticeably Invisible. We're going to do monthly releases following that, and I've interviewed 3 really interesting, quirky, and fun people. Um, and I would just, if people are interested, I would love for you guys to go to YouTube, or it's also on Spotify. There's videos now on Spotify. So we got to get these up on Spotify too, Greg. But if you go to Noticeably Invisible, you'll find the show. And yeah, maybe you'll find it interesting. Maybe
Dude,
not,
that's
and that's
awesome.
fine too. But
No, let's check it out. Give it a shot. I think that's cool. Especially with the being able to see it on video would be really cool.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So yeah, Greg, anything else that we need to cover before we go?
No, I think that's it for this week.
So we are going to dabble with a couple of holiday type episodes the next couple weeks. So, you know us, we love keeping things kind of like within the time frame that we're doing them. So if it's a holiday coming up, usually we'll try to tackle it. We're going to do our best with doing something very much outside of our comfort zone for the next week. And then the following week, we're going to do something very familiar to a lot of people.
Okay.
So I'll just leave it at that in case for some reason we change our mind. I don't want to sound like a liar. So
Well, we gotta at least do what we feel fits in that hole.
yeah. Yeah.
We can do that.
So and then once the holidays are over, we got to bang out a lot of listener suggestions. So if you've offered us suggestions and we haven't gotten to them, we're going to do our best to start to get to those following the holidays when we got some.
We'll do it. We always do it, so we'll do it.
Yes.
And we will.
Yes, master. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great week. We'll see you later. Stay fly, stay fresh, stay clean.
Okay.
So, bye, everyone.